the final segment with our guest, Alan Watt. He's covered really the spectrum here of the long-term strategy. The rebroadcast is coming up with Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, Webster Tarpley, and Alan Watt, of course. But Alan, in these final few minutes, in addition to anything you want to bring up, I would just like to point out that obviously the elections are totally controlled, really have always been a farce. But at the same time, the Democratic Party is looking to co-opt the energy of Occupy movements everywhere. They have plans for new taxes. The puppets on the right also have their plans for fresh taxes. How will this energy be used, and what do we make of people like Al Gore calling for an American Arab Spring, Alan?
Well, you're going to see more and more private people from these labor organizations, or the ones who run them or control them or agitate them. More and more of those guys brought on board for government policy, just appointees again on behalf of the workers, as I'll tell you. And but in reality, they're professionally trained and run by the big boys who run the policy institutes, etc. So it's time for a change, to say, and really make the people think they have more representation, etc. And there'll be a lot of show in government as they yell at each other once in a while, but it'll be nothing but show. You're going into a planned society. You're already into a global society, and so many treaties have been signed over the last 50 years to bind it all together so that you can't just pull out and continue. We are now dependent on outside sources to even eat nowadays. And most of the food's being imported from elsewhere. They made sure that all the farms were destroyed. That was part of the destruction of the farms by government policies and interference with the EPA and various other agencies, all to get rid of being independent. Independence must be destroyed for a global society. And all the right-wingers as well have been parroting interdependence from the days of Maggie Thatcher onwards. So, believe me, they're all in on the same deal at the top. There's not a whit of difference between them. You can't work your way up into politics and be vetted and okayed and be completely ignorant of the big agenda, the big goal at the end of it all. It cannot happen. And I gave up on this left-wing, right-wing strategy a long time ago. I knew it was a con. I've seen it happen in other countries too, various countries across Europe. I saw all the cons being played. It's been played in America to the very, very end, of course, because most Americans know darn well that they've just signed another free trade deal, one of the biggest ones, with various Latin American countries. That's a one-way street for trade. It's all imports into America and subsidizing those countries to come up to first world status. So we're going to pay out, pay out, pay out. That's part of the redistribution of wealth that we're talking about. So it's a one-way deal. America has to come down into austerity one way or another, and they've set up the whole game board for that to happen. When you can't feed yourself, to be honest with you, you're in trouble. That's a very basic thing. Very basic thing. And when we're totally dependent now on electricity, power, energy of all kinds, and they want to have a world grid system. They're building it now, where literally you'll have a world power supply company that will feed it to each region, and they'll decide on how much you'll get that day or that week. And that's the planned system of the future. Be very expensive, even for a day's worth of it, in fact. So the companies aren't losing money by giving you less. And we're being set up with smart meters, smart grids, all for that system. But they actually have maps up of the world grid system at the United Nations and elsewhere. So we're well along the road to it, and we're still talking in a almost a 19th century paradigm about politics and left and right. We're way past that point.
Okay, Alan, we'll leave it there. We really appreciate you joining us once again, and always appreciate your insights. Again, tune into the rebroadcast, and tonight, the InfoWars Nightly News. Alex Jones back tomorrow, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com.